imagine you're earning $2.5 million out of your prawn farm. You've got your electricity bills, you've got your stuff, you've got everything in place. Why not double your return for the same costs? I mean, if you have to put 2 or 3 extra staff on, it's quite minimal to the potential. And let me show you why. You've done 12 months with the container and are surprised at the results. Matter of fact, this work has been done on the Gold Coast, and the oysters were so fat they basically didn't close their shell properly. That's pretty unheard of, but that's the potential of it. So when you're filtering the water, you're not putting crap back into the river system. Here's a great way to double your income. Applications for oysters. So the next year in, you've got your 1 hectare. So just stock it out. It's got prawns in it, but it's also got oysters in it. You've doubled your production. So you harvest your prawns. You can still drain your pond. Harvesting is going to be a problem, but most people use a net system around the outside to harvest, to get a large percentage of their crop out. And then they drain it to get the rest out. Well, you can do that with oyster farming in here as well. It's quite a simple process. It's more a function of where you stack your trays so that you have an efficiency. Let's have a look at the water column. This is where it gets exciting. Surface, bottom. And I've got a series of trays sitting on the bottom. There's 15 of them. And there's quite a few over the distance. So what happens now is you've got a 3-dimensional prawn pond. Not only have you got oysters growing here, but all your prawns will settle on top of the oysters. They have security, they have a far better environment to grow, and they can be less dense. So 10 tonne is a relatively easy figure for prawns at harvest time. With no extra technology. You're not using any bioscience or additives or bacteria or anything to stabilise the water. It's all being done for you. And here's the beauty of it. There's our oyster, blown up in size. There's his hinge, adductor muscle, body of the oyster, that type of thing. Here's his mouth at the top end of the gills. His anus is down here. So if you look at this oyster head on, you'll get the feces coming out this side, and it looks pretty much like that. It's a mucus-bound filament of feces. The same out of here that I mentioned earlier is the pseudo-feces. These particles are too big to fit in the mouth, so they just package them up and spit them out. That is oyster food. So you've converted a pollution effect in your pond to a feed source, a naturally occurring feed source. Prawns are coprophagic. They will eat feces, and this is an ideal food for prawns. So your feed rate goes down, your productivity goes up. All you need to do is understand the science of aquaculture. It's not, I was nearly going to say it's not rocket science. God help me. This is exciting. I did this work 30 years ago, and it still is as exciting to talk about today as what it was back then. Applications of oyster farming. Now, if we looked at the Gold Coast and said, oh, hang on a minute, they've got QX disease. If you look at oysters in the wild, oysters on trays, let's say the Clarence River in New South Wales, the northern end of New South Wales, their oysters all die on their trays, and they say, well, it's QX disease. But how come there's still oysters on the bottom? If you go scuba diving or even snorkeling, you can get a great feed of oysters in the Clarence River. The oysters here have died, these ones have survived. What's that telling you? It's pretty obvious. QX disease is a stress effect. So winter temperatures or summer temperatures stress the animals. Not these ones, these ones. 2 weeks later, there's a large percentage of mortality. It's just reading the signs. It happens every time you get a QX event. You go back a few weeks and have a look at what the temperature was doing. Have a look at the weather conditions. They will tell you exactly what you need to know. The last great example was the mortality in Tasmania 2 years ago, when the summer temperatures got to 23 or 24 degrees and stayed there. Well, Pacific oysters simply don't do well because their food source, for a start, is a colder water organism. So their food rate is going to be low. They're stressed to the top limits of their survivability. Anyway, getting back to it. So what this system here gets rid of this potential. And you've proven it because 12 months ago, you decided to put 2 container loads of oysters on the bank and watch them feed. The work, I haven't personally seen it, but I understand that those experiments have been done and were very successful. Why that hasn't progressed is probably because there's not enough people with crossover science. You need water chemistry, you need to understand the biology of an oyster, you need to be fairly passionate about your subject. It's not just an income at the end of the week. Okay, well, there's a rather passionate talk on applications of oyster farming, land-based oyster farming and aquaculture. Thank you.